solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
I made a major decision that not only was I going to leave the military, I was going to not go into commercial aviation, because the natural progression, especially when you fly a 737, is most of my peers were going to the major airlines and flying for them. But what does that lifestyle look like? And to me, I'd always looked ahead at the people who were in front of me doing the thing that I was considering. And I asked myself, do I want to be in their shoes? Is that something I would want for my life? How they're living right now, is that something desirable to me? Because when I looked at doing my next tour on the aircraft carrier and how I said that didn't align with my values, that's because I looked towards people who are doing that and I saw the challenges they were facing doing that. And of course, it's not all bad. They were having good experiences too, but it just wasn't aligned with my values. And so acknowledging and recognizing that was a great first step. And then looking at my options, my obvious options on the outside, and then saying, hey, is this a good fit? Would this be a better alternative? Well, as I went into understanding commercial aviation, I came to understand that I was going to be gone a lot. I was going to be away from home a lot, overnighting in cities that were not home. And so I came to realize that, holy cow, I'm about to get out of the military. If I do this very parallel job, the issue is that it's going to be just like the military. And so I'm not improving the thing I'm trying to improve. And so that's when I very deliberately said, I need to do something totally different. I have this much time to prepare and figure this out, but I need to start getting after it now. I'd talked to everyone who had gone through TAP and people had been on the other side, and I knew it was a week long, and I just thought in 1 week's time, I don't think I'm going to be able to figure out all the stuff I need to figure out. I don't think that's going to be the Hail Mary I need to figure it all out. Realizing that I didn't know what I was doing and I needed someone who knew what to do to help me. And that's not a natural instinct for military folks, whether you be an officer or enlisted. By the time you're at a certain point in your career, people look to you for answers and people look to you to make decisions. And then as a husband and father, I think it doubles that mentality where you feel like you're responsible for a lot and you have to drive the decision making and it has to come from you. And so you get into this going it alone mindset that you think you have to do everything. And then you look towards an environment that you totally don't understand. I've never gotten out of the military. I don't know what that looks like. And that's when a little bit of panic and emotions start setting in. So that puts you in a position of, how do I do this? And really just start getting rid of your own ego and your own thought process that told you that you had to make all the decisions yourself. You start realizing that I need to ask for help here. Knowing what questions to ask is key, and it goes beyond the advice you get of, hey, connect, find a mentor, do informational interviews, grow your network. Sure, cool. But the most important part of that entire concept is the next step, which is, what do you ask? So there are good questions to ask and there are bad questions to ask. A bad question to ask would be about pay or anything like that right off the bat, because you're just not there yet. You're not doing a job interview and you might be burning a bridge with an employer who's not going to give you that information anyway, because that's not their role. What you want to do is research that person and their background and find out what business unit they're in within the company, what role they have, and how that contributes within the company. If you're interested in that role, coming up with very specific questions regarding that role. Things about company culture. What's the company culture like? It says this on the website, but is that true? It says they support veterans, that there's a ERG for veterans. Is that really robust though? Is that active or not so much? What kind of support do you get? What would be the training pipeline if I start out in this entry-level role? How quickly could I potentially move up? What kind of challenges do you think I'll face in the kind of role that you have? What challenges have you faced? Did you come straight out of the military? Because typically you're going to connect with other veterans. That's the hack we have, right? is that we can reach any company almost in the world because there's a veteran who works there that'll be willing to talk to you. And that's a hack that we have that others don't, because veterans do want to help other veterans. We have that connection, and that becomes access to a company. You got to be careful with that because you don't want to burn that bridge. And what we teach in our course at Pre-Veteran is that you have to treat different people differently. You need to make decisions with your spouse and significant other. That's your core team, your core decision makers. Your internal network, that would be friends and family. They're going to give you unsolicited good advice, at least unfiltered advice that can be valuable. So you talk to them differently than your spouse. And then these are external subject matter experts that we're talking about here. You want to talk to them much differently than you would your spouse or a family member or close friend. They're not your buddy. They're someone who works in the industry. You're trying to get some of their time. They're providing value to you, and they're taking time out of their day when they're very busy. And so to me, you need to be prepared and have good questions to ask so you're not wasting their time. Also, by the way, they could be your potential hiring manager and employer. So you want to come across as professionally as you can so that if you do want to seek a job with them down the road, that you've had a positive interaction and you start building a relationship with them. So this is a key part that people just brush over and leave out, but it's the most important thing.
Why do you think we as military people always end up just almost falling into these stereotypical paths out of the military? You're a pilot, you go fly for Delta or whoever. You're an academy grad, you go to an MBA program, and then you go do something else. Like, why do you think that? I'm guilty of it? Cyber warfare. I work as a cybersecurity consultant in Amazon Web Services. I'd like to think that I added some more nuance to my decision, but now that I have done this podcast and interact with a lot of people like yourself, I really didn't. So why do you think that veterans so easily just fall into these stereotypes?
I think one thing is we don't understand risk very well in terms of the private sector and what risk looks like in the private sector. But I think to a greater effect is really just what possibilities are we giving ourselves? Because I think of this experiment that was done a long time ago called the elevator experiment, where one guy would get in the elevator and basically turn around backwards, and then they would wait for new folks to come into the elevator. And then they would have 2 or 3 actors that would turn and face backwards. And then as more people came in, the experiment was to see if the non-players were going to turn and face the wrong direction, or if they were going to face the elevator door where it clearly was. And it was like 99% of the time, these folks would turn and face the wrong direction. And so obviously it's just having to deal with conformity and doing what seems to make sense based on what you're seeing around you. The problem with that is when you're in the military environment, all you're seeing is the effects of that military environment. You're not seeing very far outside of that. So take me, for example. I was flying a Boeing aircraft. So we worked with third-party contractors who worked for Boeing. And so I was familiar with the company Boeing. And that was like my first thought and go-to when I was looking at private sector jobs. Oh, I'm going to go work at Boeing, because I know other folks who went there and worked there. And I was limiting myself to that option, and I was limiting myself to commercial aviation, because what did my friends and my peers do? They went to commercial aviation. The ones who didn't do that, what did they do? They went and got their MBA. So I was like, well, I gotta choose one of these 3 things because that's all I know. And it's just such a limiting mindset, because there's a world of possibilities when you get out of the military and you go into the private sector that you're not going to get another set of orders. You're not going to have anyone tell you what's next. The kind of mindset transformation we're talking about is that it's a total shift. When you're going to a new environment, you need a different mindset. That's just the matter of fact how it is. And we know that because we do it in the military. We do it in training, actually. When we're getting ready for a deployment, what do? We get ready for the environment we're about to go in. If it's cold weather, guess what? We do training for cold weather. If they speak another language, guess what? We have someone on the team who speaks that other language, or we're ready for that interaction in some way or another. So we do that preparation in the military, and then for some reason that breakdown happens when we're getting out, that we think we can just go into this other new environment with no change to ourselves or our mindset or our training.
Hey, everybody. I really hope that you liked this supercut of Aaron Ingram's episode of the Post-Military Podcast. If you did and you want to see more, I would recommend that you check out the whole episode, which is here on YouTube and also on multiple different podcasting platforms. If you like this and you want to support the channel, I would ask that you give the video a like, subscribe, and share the content with those who might need to hear it. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.